The wind screamed across the empty plains, carrying with it the taste of frost and dust. The sun had long disappeared behind the ridge, leaving the Arizona desert shrouded in a bitter, merciless cold. Jack Morrison tightened his worn coat around him, his breath clouding the air like smoke. He had lived on this land his whole life, running cattle and fixing fences, but he'd never known a winter like this one. The snow had fallen fast and deep, swallowing trails and isolating the ranch from town. His truck had died on the road that afternoon, and his horse, Old Dusty, stumbled and broke a leg not long after. He'd been walking for hours, searching for the faint outline of his ranch house through the blizzard. But as the sky darkened, so did his hope. Jack had always thought himself a survivor. He'd fought droughts, sickness, and loneliness, and always found a way to push through. But now, standing knee-deep in snow under a sky that looked like black glass, he began to realize how fragile a man could be when nature decided to turn against him. His hands were numb, his boots soaked through. He could barely feel his fingers around the flashlight that flickered weakly before dying altogether. The darkness closed in, and for the first time in a long while, Jack Morrison felt fear. Then he saw her. At first, he thought it was just the wind playing tricks on him, a figure kneeling by a fallen pine near the creek. But as he stumbled closer, squinting through the whirling snow, he saw her clearly, a young girl, no older than 16, wrapped in a thin deer-hide blanket. Her long black hair was braided and crusted with frost, her face calm, almost serene, despite the cold. She didn't move when he approached, and Jack wondered if she was even alive. "Hey," he rasped, his voice cracking against the silence. "You all right, kid?" The girl looked up, her eyes dark and still as the winter sky. "You were lost," she said softly. Her voice was steady, with a quiet authority that startled him. Jack blinked. "You could say that," he muttered, trying to smile. "Truck's dead, horses gone. I was trying to make it back home." She tilted her head slightly. "Home is far," she said, glancing toward the ridge. "You won't make it tonight." He looked around helplessly. "Yeah, I figured that out. I don't suppose you've got a fire going anywhere nearby." The girl shook her head slowly. "No fire," she said. "Fire burns bright. Bright means eyes see. Out here, eyes watch." Jack frowned. "Eyes. Coyotes," she said simply. And worse. A chill that had nothing to do with the cold ran through him. He wanted to ask who she was, why she was out here alone in a snowstorm with no fire and no shelter. But she was already moving, quiet as a shadow, graceful in the deep snow. She gestured for him to follow. Too cold and too tired to argue, he trudged behind her. They walked for several minutes, through a grove of snow-covered mesquites, until they reached a small hollow in the hillside. She ducked inside and motioned for him to do the same. It was little more than a shallow cave, but the wind didn't reach them there, and the air felt slightly warmer. The girl sat down on a pile of pine needles and gestured for him to do the same. "Rest," she said. "You must keep your blood warm. Sit close to the earth. She holds heat longer than the air." He did as she said, though he felt foolish taking orders from a child. She untied a bundle from her waist and handed him a piece of dried meat. He hesitated, then took it. It was tough, but his stomach was empty, and he chewed it gratefully. "You live out here?" he asked between bites. She nodded. "My people do. Not far from here, in the valley." He studied her face. "Apache." Yes, he'd heard of the Apache living in these parts, descendants of the old tribes that had hunted and ridden these lands long before men like him ever came with their cattle and fences. But he'd never met one, not like this. "You got a name?" he asked. "Chenoa," she said quietly. "It means white dove." "Fitting," he murmured. "You saved me out there." Chenoa didn't smile. "You saved yourself," she said. "You listened. Many men don't." Jack wanted to laugh, but the truth of her words silenced him. Most men like him didn't listen. They thought they knew the land, but they never truly respected it. They built fences and wells and barns, believing they'd conquered nature. But nature didn't belong to anyone, it merely tolerated them. The night deepened, and the cold tightened around them like a fist. Jack shivered violently. "I don't get it," he said through chattering teeth. "You've got no fire, no blanket thick enough to keep you warm. How are you not freezing?" Chenoa looked at him, her gaze calm and unwavering. Fire burns fast, she said. Breath burns slow. My grandfather taught me, when you have nothing, use what you are given. Breath is warmth. Thought is fire. She showed him how to breathe in slow, steady rhythm, deep into the belly, exhaling through the nose, conserving warmth. She showed him how to press his body against the earth, to draw its lingering heat. She covered their legs with snow, explaining that it trapped air and kept warmth inside. At first, it felt wrong, burying himself in snow to stay warm, but after a while, he realized she was right. The trembling eased. His body stopped fighting the cold and began to work with it. They sat like that for hours, saying little. The storm howled outside, but within their little hollow, there was a strange peace. Jack watched the girl, her face faintly lit by the pale reflection of snowlight. She was motionless, her eyes half closed as if listening to something beyond his hearing. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "My mother," she said after a pause. "She passed last winter. She said the snow is the sky's blanket for the earth, to remind us that even in cold, there is care." Jack felt a lump in his throat. "I lost my wife years ago," he said softly. "Snow fell that night, too." Chenoa glanced at him, her eyes softening. "Then you know," she said. "The snow never comes to take, only to teach." He didn't understand then, but her words stayed with him long after the storm died. When morning came, the wind had calmed. The world outside the cave was bright and silent, the snow stretching endlessly in every direction. Chenoa stood first, brushing the frost from her hair. "The storm has passed," she said. "You can go home now." Jack rose stiffly, his muscles aching. "You're not coming." She shook her head. "My people wait for me." He hesitated. "I owe you my life, Chenoa. You sure you don't need a ride back?" "I walk," she said simply. "The land will guide me." He wanted to argue, to insist on repaying her somehow. But she was already turning away, her small figure moving gracefully through the snow. In minutes, she was gone, swallowed by the white horizon. Jack made it home that afternoon. His hands were frostbitten, his feet raw, but he was alive. He told no one about the girl at first, thinking perhaps it had been a dream. But when he went back a few days later to find the cave, it was there, just as he remembered. On the ground, he found a piece of deerskin wrapped around a small bundle of sage. Inside was a single eagle feather and a smooth stone etched with a pattern he couldn't decipher. He carried that stone in his pocket for years. Months passed, and the snows melted into spring. The ranch survived, though barely. Jack found himself thinking of Chenoa often, of her quiet strength, her calm wisdom. He began reading about Apache traditions, learning how they saw balance between man and nature. He started changing how he ran his ranch, using what the land offered instead of forcing it to his will. Slowly, the animals grew healthier, the soil richer. One summer, he met a woman at the trading post in town. She was older than Chenoa but had the same stillness in her eyes. Her name was Naya, and she sold handmade blankets. They talked for a while, and when Jack mentioned the girl who had saved him, Naya froze. "Chenoa," she whispered. "That was my niece." Jack blinked. "Was?" Naya looked down. "She passed 2 winters ago. She went into the snow to find her lost pony. She never came back." Jack felt the ground tilt beneath him. "That can't be. I met her this last winter." Naya met his eyes, her expression unreadable. "The elders say Chenoa's spirit walks when the snow falls hardest. She helps the lost find their way. Maybe she found you." Jack didn't know what to say. He thanked Naya, bought a blanket, and drove home in silence. That night, he sat by his fire, holding the eagle feather he still kept by the mantle. Outside, the wind began to rise again, snow swirling in silver sheets across the fields. He stepped onto the porch, the cold biting at his face, and looked toward the ridge. For a brief moment, in the shimmer of moonlight, he thought he saw her, standing among the pines, her braid lifted by the wind, her eyes as calm and knowing as before. Then she was gone. Years passed. Jack grew old. The ranch thrived, not through force, but through respect for the land. People in the valley began calling it White Dove Ranch. He taught young ranch hands the same things Chenoa had taught him: how to breathe slow, how to listen to the earth, how to find warmth in the cold. And every winter, When the snow came heavy and the wind howled through the canyons, he would light a single candle on the porch, not for heat, but for remembrance. One bitter night, much like the one he'd nearly died in, Jack sat by the fire, weak and tired. The doctor had told him his heart wouldn't last the season. He felt no fear. The snow was falling again, soft and silent, blanketing the earth in white. He looked out the window and smiled faintly. "Chenoa," he whispered, "you were right. The snow doesn't come to take." He closed his eyes, the fire crackling gently beside him. In his final moments, he felt warmth, not from flame, but from something deeper, something timeless. He saw the cave again, the glow of snowlight, the stillness of the earth's breath. He saw the Apache girl, smiling now, her eyes bright as dawn. When the ranch hands found him the next morning, he was sitting peacefully, the eagle feather in his hand. Outside, the snow was beginning to melt, the first sunlight breaking through the clouds. And far up the ridge, where the wind whispered through the pines, a single white dove took flight, rising into the clear blue sky, carrying with it the warmth of a lesson that would never fade. That even in the coldest night, the kindness of one soul can teach another how to survive, how to live, and how to find warmth without fire.